Welcome back to SwitchUp and welcome back to a huge eShop sale. This one's actually pretty darn chunky, so I feel alright using that word. Plus the views though. We're going to look at some of the best sales at the moment. There are some incredible games, some that you shouldn't miss out on, and at these prices it's certainly worth adding them to the gigantic backlog. Congratulations to the winner of last week's free giveaway. If you want to enter for next week, just leave a comment down below. Make it normal, yeah? It's been really nice having a couple of days off the channel, a bit of a rest, so that we can come back even stronger. And do be sure to stick around to the end of the video, as usual, where we look at 2 games that you should avoid. So, what's on sale? Hang on, that's not it, is it? What's on sale? Let's find out. First up then, one of my favourite games on the eShop, and it's the Delightful Moonlighter, which is 66% off, taking it down to its lowest price of all time, which is only £6.99. My word. Now this sale goes on until September the 10th, so you've got a little bit of time to pick this one up. If you're not sure what it is, it's essentially a dungeon crawler by night and then a shop simulator by day. You manage your own shop, place your items, but there's this book. It almost works like a, I don't know what you'd call it, I forget the name, but you can look through and judge the different prices. You can see what they're selling for, what's not selling, and gradually work out the perfect prices to pitch your products. Man, that was a tongue twister. It's a super addictive game. There has been a DLC for it as well, which is also on sale, called Between Dimensions, which adds quite a nice little chunk of content. Now this one clocks in at around about 20 to 25 hours, but that really depends on how good you are at the game and how addicted you get to the loop. It isn't easy, it is quite a tricky game. There are a number of different weapons that you can pick up and use, but for me it was that soundtrack. It's just an incredible soundtrack, and this is well worth picking up. This is a very good price, but it's all about that OST. This one clocks in at 1.9 gigs and holds a Metacritic score of 83%. Luigis Mansion 3 is an exceptional title. It really is brilliant. We've got a review of it on the channel if you want to check that out, but I'm sure you probably know by now. And what you also know is that it doesn't go on sale very often, and at 33% off at about 30 quid, it's well worth a pickup. It takes place within the Last Resort Hotel, and you'll be looking for Mario and his friends who have gone missing. As you'd expect, you'll be catching ghosts and solving puzzles, and each of the floors, which act as levels, are themed, so it's constantly changing as you go throughout. Now you can play 2-player co-op, but the second player plays as Luigi, so it's a bit more like co-pilot co-op. You can buy the multiplayer pack DLC on sale as well. That's 24% off, and the overall title's probably going to take you around about 17 hours to complete, but if you want to find everything, more like 21. Clocks in at 7.3 gigs, so it's not the biggest game ever, and it holds a Metacritic score of 86%. If you're after something that doesn't come up often on sale, then I'd suggest potentially picking up Sundered Eldritch Edition. Now this Metroidvania is currently 75% off, taking it down to £3.87. And Jace reviewed it for us on the channel. We'll pop a link down in the description. I believe this comes from Thunder Lotus Studios, and one thing they do is they manage to produce beautifully handcrafted worlds in terms of the art style. They look lovely. This time around you play as Esh, I think it's Esh, and interestingly this one supports 4-player co-op. One thing Thunder Lotus always do really well are the boss fights, and here some of them are incredible. I wouldn't say of all the Metroidvanias this is the best, but at this crazy price it's definitely worth adding to your backlog. It's going to take you around about 15 hours to complete, or 17 hours if you're a completionist. It's got a download size of 3.2 gigs and a Metacritic score of 76%, and that sale ends on the 30th of August. Matching its previous low is Divinity Original Sin 2, the definitive edition. Over the months, many of you have been like, oh, shall I pick it up? Shall I not? Shall I? This is the lowest price. You're probably going to see it because it's such a good game until maybe the next one comes along. But it's 30% off, taking it down to around about 30 quid. And just before I say anything else, you're looking at a Metacritic score of 93%. There are 5 different races to choose from. And interestingly, for this style of game, some of those races have characters that are pre-built, so they have their own origin story, etc., their own lore, which is really cool. Or you can just create your own from scratch. Much of the action takes place from a top-down 3D isometric view, and it's one of those where you can do anything you want. You can talk to someone, say, hey look, I really need the keys to get into that door, and then they'll say, no, you can't have them, you've got to go and do 64 quests, and then you can convince them to part with it. in any way you choose, which is just, I love games like that. I love that freedom, and it's certainly a game that offers plenty of that. There's loads of different environments to play through. It's got a lovely art style. It's had a lot of performance patches since it launched. It was a bit juddery, especially in the latter stages. It's not perfect, but it's well worth picking up in the state it's in. There is a touch of turn-based combat, so you can pause time, a bit like the old Baldur's Gate titles, before restarting time, and then the action, carries on from what you chose to do. It is 11.8 gigs, so it's quite a chunky, and there is online 2 to 4 player multiplayer. Or local, if you've got a few switches, you can do 2 to 4 player as well. There was one game to pick up this week, and my money would certainly be pushing towards Divinity. That sale ends on the 30th of August. One of the absolute best and most underrated games, I'd say, on the Switch is Red Faction Guerrilla the Remastered Edition. Now yes, I know back in the day it got quite a lot of recognition, but personally I never played it. And then I played it on the Switch, and oh my word, it's amazing. It's 45% off at the minute, and it's set 50 years after the events of the original Red Faction. Its main, perhaps, selling point is the ability to just destroy anything. You can use your hammer to smash through walls, knock buildings down, or you can detonate them remotely with explosive or fire rocket launchers. It's just a title full of fun. It lets you run wherever you want to go, really, and there's a ton of side quests and stories. It's just a really good game. Now it clocks in at a chunky old 13.8 gigs, and it only holds a Metacritic of 72, which for my money is a little bit low. We've reviewed it on the channel if you want to check that out, and if you want to complete the entire game, it's going to take you about 28 hours. There is online multiplayer for 2 to 16 players, and I should imagine at the moment they're probably filled up servers because everyone's just bought it on sale. This sale ends on the 30th of August. I think if someone asked me for my top 5 games on Switch, Dead Cells would definitely be probably in the top 3, to be honest. It's an exceptional game, absolutely brilliant. There's no two ways about it. You control a nameless, headless, well, essentially resurrected corpse who goes through each of the stages. Now there are different paths that you can choose, and you unlock new paths as you progress. It is a roguelite in that sense, and you'll be wanting to complete an entire run, beating all the bosses and then reaching the king and killing him if you can, and that's how you'll gradually progress and unlock new abilities, which are shown in these hanging globes every time you start the game. Each enemy takes its own approach, and that's one of the beauties of these titles. It makes you actually play well. There are 3 different classes of weapon and defensive items, and they're color coded by red, green and purple, and each floor you complete you can then pull the points that you've gained into different areas. It's quite difficult to really put into words why it's so compulsive. I think it's a mixture. It's got beautiful controls, really silky smooth and quick pixel graphics, but it's also got that otherness that some titles seem to convey. It's a bit of a mystery. Now personally I would have liked to touch more lore in terms of discoverable things as you progress, but there are little bits and bobs. Whether or not the developers fleshed that out as much as they could have, I'll leave that up to you. There's also a nice chunk of DLC that's been out since launch, some of it free and some of it paid. You can get the Bad Seed DLC, which is about, I think it's a few pounds, but there's also the Rise of the Giant, which is totally free. This one from Motion Twin clocks in at 901 megs, so it's very small really. To completely complete it, well really it depends on your ability, but you're looking at around about 50 to 80 hours, and it holds a Metacritic score of 89%. Certainly for fans of games like Hollow Knight, Celeste, Enter the Gungeon, things that require a little bit more skill, and at 40% off with a sale that ends on September the 1st, you should pick it up. Oh man, I didn't realise 2 Point Hospital was on sale as well. This is a brilliant game. Based as it is, very, very much so, and I believe there's even some of the people involved on it, on the game theme Hospital, which was released many, many moons ago when old people like me were actually young. You have to control and build up a hospital. It takes place from an isometric view. We do have a review of this one as well, but it's not a title that sees many significant price drops. So 40% obviously is its highest drop so far. One of the best things about the game is that the hospital you build will have an influx of all sorts of diseases that you'll have to try and cure through your research and the machines that you build. There's also a lovely aspect to it where you hire different staff members and they'll have different abilities based on how much you want to pay them. Some of the cures are very strange indeed, and it's just got a lovely charming aesthetic and a beautiful soundtrack as well to go along with it. You're looking at a 2.1 gig download, so not the smallest but not too bad at all, especially when you consider that the main game is going to take you around 75 hours to complete. But if you want to do everything, you're looking at 126 hours, and if I'm not mistaken, there's a sandbox mode as well, so you can just build your own hospital and play infinitely really, and it carries a Metacritic rating of 85%. I'm not making this easy for you this week. I wouldn't want to be picking one of these games because, man, there's just too many good ones. There's one thing that we don't see very often, and that's a game actually living up to the hype. I'd say Streets of Rage 4 is one of the few, and I mean the minutiae, have actually lived up to the hype that's been leveled upon them. It's a brilliant game. Now, GLen reviewed it for us. It's seeing a 15% off sale at the moment, which is its all-time lowest price, and it's more than just nostalgia. I'd say this is a more improved game in almost every way. It's very slick. There are subtle touches like being able to block behind you. The soundtrack is unbelievable, and it's the same studio that did the art on the amazing Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap remake. There are 12 different levels to play through, but if you want to use the old retro music, you can do that as well, which is nice. One area I wasn't sure was gonna, well, I just didn't know if it was going to be too much carnage on screen, but it's the 4-player co-op. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But the best aspect of the game, chicken. Braised chicken. This one clocks in at 3.2 gigs. To do a run through is only going to take you about 5 or 6 hours, but to complete everything about 16, and it holds a Metacritic score of 86%. If you're after something potentially a little bit different, but that has that old school Diablo vibe, then check out Children of Mortar. This was one of my favourite games. I think it was last year. Has it been a year since this came out? My goodness. Yeah, it was November. Man. This has offline 1 or 2 player co-op, and it was in the 2-player co-op that it really shone for me. You control one of the Bergson family, and there's actually been a 7th playable character, I believe, added to the game that was designed by either one of the Kickstarter backers, yeah, something like that. And it has the Paws and Claws DLC that you can buy as well. Now, it's a roguelite, but it's the story that progresses. Every time you do a run, you go back to your house, and that story just develops and develops. And although it can be a bit brutal, I'm not going to lie, you get to rescue a little baby wolf. So, you know, worth it just for that. Each character has their own unique skills. I personally preferred the ranged class. You could keep enemies at bay and just whittle them down while your partner took all of the heat. Dead Mage did a great job with the art in my opinion, and support for the game seems to be ongoing. Now the main story, and to complete that, it's probably going to take you around about 15 hours. Took me a little bit longer because the boss was being unfair to me, kept killing me and stuff. But if you're a completionist, you're looking at around about 28 hours. This one holds a Metacritic score of 80%, and it has a download size of 2.2 gigs. Okay, that's it. One thing to think about before we look at 2 games you should avoid. Some of these have packs that include the DLC that are also on sale, like the Dead Seed bundle that you can buy with Dead Cells and the DLC included. That's worth probably picking up over just the base game. There are other titles, but their sale ends too soon. You've got things like Transistor and Bastion. If you can pick them up within the next 24 hours, they're incredible. They're amazing games, well worth buying. Other ones that you should pick up are things like Darksiders 2. Aragami is a really interesting game, a bit like Tenchu Stealth Assassin. Hypercharge is on sale, and LA Noire, man, I love that game. Okay then, it's that time of the week where we look at 2 games that you should avoid, like a SwitchUp sales video when your backlog's already ridiculous. Oh, you know who you are. First up, we have Burnout Paradise. Let's just let that settle in. What are you talking about, Mark? What on earth are you doing? It's a great game. Yeah, it is a great game, but we need to do the same thing we did with Capcom. Now, what Capcom did is they released their game ridiculously expensive. All of their titles, their old ports they came across, they were crazy expensive, and no one bought them. So then they reduced their base price, so their sale prices were even cheaper. At £31, you know, Burnout Paradise Remastered is a good game. It's very good. If you want to buy it, crack on. But you know what? In my opinion, it should be 30 quid when they released it, and we should be looking at 20 quid or less at the moment for a sale. Am I surprised as it's EA? No, I'm not. Not surprised at all. But if you want it to change, then personally, I'd wait till they permanently crank the base price down. And second up is a game that is just crap, and that's Demolish and Build 2018. I remember playing this for a short while and thinking this is going to be amazing. I'm stood there in my first person pixelated perspective. I'm handed a virtual sledgehammer and sent into a casino to demolish it. What resulted in pressing a button whilst looking at a wall gradually disappearing and no real movement of the hammer, a few minutes carrying old chairs and throwing them in a skip, and then one good throw of my Nintendo Switch across the room as I realised this is all the game was offering. It's currently on sale, so don't check it out. And that's it for this week. That's our sales. Well, actually, it's not for this week. This is our midweek sales video, which we don't usually do, but I'm back from holiday. I saw some of these and I wanted to get them in a list before the sales ended. Let us know down in the comments if you'll be picking up any of these, and do subscribe if you enjoy the channel. A big thanks to our patrons who support us each and every week. We really appreciate it. And as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!